How's it going, everybody? We are live here on odds.com exclusively for the UFC 255 post-weigh-in show, and we got another good one this week. There's always some shenanigans going on at these weigh-ins, and you gotta just, you love it. You love to see it. So let's dig straight on into this thing because we've got a big card with a lot to get through. First up on the scales, or first fight of the night, I guess I should say, Cosce taking on Sasha Palatnikov. We've got Cosce coming in at 170, Sasha coming in at 170.5. Now, Cosce, as always, just a brick shithouse. This dude is strong, he's built, he's got that farmer strength, ready to go. Sasha came in at 170.5 and looked to be in very good shape himself. Really nothing to report there. Even though he's only got 7 fights on his record, he looked like he had been doing this since day one. Both guys made weight, no issues. Face off, Sasha was much much than Cosce, but we knew that coming in. Now Cosce, we got in on him early. We got in on Cosce when that line opened up somewhere in the minus 365 type of range. It's been nothing but Cosce money. He's all the way down to minus 500. And this is officially the time where you kind of start thinking that's just way too much chalk, way too much price tag. He is 7-0. I do expect him to win this fight. He is undefeated. His opponent is not as good of a grappler as he is. His opponent does have a weak chin, but we're getting way too wide of a line for a guy that's making his UFC debut. So those of you who got in with me early, who got that good price, who locked in that parlay, we're all set. We're ready to go. But I don't necessarily think I would suggest playing him at this point at the minus 500 or higher range, even though I do think he's going to win this fight. The face-off, really calm. Neither guy seemed to be overly interested in, beefing or getting up in each other's face, anything like that. This fight will be a banger come tomorrow night. But as of right now, they're both keeping it chill. Next fight up, we've got Daukaus taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Now, Kyle came in at 185.5. Dustin came in at 184.5. Now, Daukaus, I'm not going to lie, he looked a little tired. This is something that I always talk about. This is the whole point of the show. We try to find little hidden nuggets of value in the body language, the emotion, what we can read from these people when they're actually weighing in and when they're staring at their opponents. And Daukaus looked tired. In the eyes, I could see it. And that's something that has me just a little hesitant. I was kind of thinking about taking a shot on the underdog here in Dustin Stoltzfus. He's a very good wrestler, big and strong. He's got a big flex. He's extreme confident. No weigh-in issues on that side of things. And when they faced off, the height disadvantage was pretty significant for Daukaus. But like we've talked about before with grapplers, that's not a negative. When you've got a big, tall, long guy like that, that's way more room for you to get in on those legs and hips. So I am tempted on the underdog here, Dustin Stoltzfus, but unfortunately I do believe in Daukaus enough that it's kind of keeping me off this one. This is Stoltzfus' UFC debut. We've seen Daukaus perform at a high level, so I'm just going to go ahead and pass, but I feel like this is a dog or pass situation. I wouldn't want to put my money on Daukaus at this point in time, especially now that that line is just continuing to spread wider and wider. Daukaus opened up at minus 245. He's now sitting at minus 320. And I mean, if this gets all the way up to the point where Dustin Stoltzfus is a 3-1 underdog or a 3.5-1 underdog, something ridiculous like that by the time the fights roll around, I mean, maybe I'll throw a unit on him just because I have to at those kind of crazy odds because he is a very strong wrestler and I think he'll be able to get this fight to the ground. Jouban coming in at 170.5 pounds. Jared Gooden makes weight at 171. Jouban looked relaxed, confident, and honestly in really great shape. This is a guy that's 37 years old. They're talking about reevaluating his career after this fight, seeing how much longer he has to go in the fight game and maybe even hanging it up. He's got that cushy desk job with the UFC, doing the commentary. That's always something that makes people want to get out of the fight game just a little bit quicker. They can get paid without getting punched in the face. Jared Gooden making his UFC debut looked phenomenal on the scales. Big double flex. He gave the up. He gave the down. Like this guy is ready to go, and he is a brick shithouse. They sized up very, very well at the face-offs. This is something that Jared Gooden just seems to be the much more physically imposing man, but height and reach-wise, they match up extremely well. This was a spot where initially earlier in the week I was looking at maybe betting Jared Gooden. I had a lot of people saying that Jouban was the side, and we never bet on retiring fighters. That's something I always try to avoid. The fact that Jouban is getting to the end of his career, and he's been very vocal about that, has made me definitely want to stay away from touching him here in this fight. I do think he's the better technical striker, but I think the youth, the power, the hunger, that's all on the side of Jared Gooden. But we have seen Jared Gooden be boxed up by people that have that slight advantage before. And I do think that Jouban is going to have a speed advantage in this fight. Now, when Jared Gooden explodes, he'll be able to get to the punch that much quicker, but he has to reload. Think Yoel Romero. When he explodes, that one moment, he's going to be faster than Jouban, but on a regular basis throughout the length of the fight, Jouban will be the one landing sharper, crisper, snappier punches, and that volume, I think, is going to end up being a problem. Being in the small cage, I feel like favors Gooden, though. Gooden is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, and he's got the power advantage, so Jouban's going to have to be on his P's and Q's this entire time. The last thing I guess I can say on this one is that I'm passing. I had a lean earlier in the week to Jared Gooden. That line didn't ever quite get where I wanted it to be, the plus 125, plus 130 range. It's not quite enough for me to go ahead and take that shot against a guy that still apparently has some gas left in the tank. Jouban showing up so on point, looking so good on the scales, just dialed in, ready to go. It sent a message to me, and it's just not one that I want to mess with. Even if Jared Gooden does end up pulling this one off, I'm not going to be upset at myself for passing here. Daniel Rodriguez comes in at 170 pounds and a half, taking on Nicolas Dalby, who came in at 170 flat. It looks like Daniel Rodriguez is ready to go. Very sharp, looks slim, look cut, look good. Good on the scales. Now, Nicolas Dalby, he was actually in very good shape, and he also seemed to be in very good mood. He gave a nice big flex. He was smiling while he was up there, so that's kind of a positive on the side of Dalby. I do think that Daniel Rodriguez is the better all-around fighter here. I think the hand speed and the power of Daniel Rodriguez is eventually just going to be too much for Dalby, but Dalby coming in the kind of condition that he's in, this could actually be a dogfight. It may not be that first-round spectacular knockout that a lot of us assumed that it may just be. It was a very intense face off, and I got to tell you, D-Rock looked stone cold, and Dalby didn't blink. Dalby stared him right back in the eyes. He's ready to go for this fight. I think he's hungry coming off that knockout and submission, that club and sub loss against Jesse Ronson his last time out. He's looking to make a statement here. I don't know that he's going to actually be able to pull it off. I'm thinking Rodriguez maybe gets a later KO. I think Dalby might be able to mind the range, get a couple takedowns, mix in the grappling, and slow things down. But once that gas tank starts to fade on him, I think eventually Rodriguez does turn it up and does clip him. Although I don't want to bet it at this line. This is another one where it's just really, really wide. We've got another 3-1 or so favorite. Sorry, I'm trying to find him here on my list of fighters. They've got him out of order on bestfightpicks.com. So minus 330 on the side of Daniel Rodriguez. If you're looking for another parlay, if you're looking for another favorite that you want to throw in there, I guess that would be one that I would be comfortable with, because I just don't see a way that Nicolas Dalby wins this fight. I don't see him being able to control Rodriguez on the ground for a full 15 minutes or enough of a full 15 minutes to actually get the nod on a decision. And when they're on the feet, Rodriguez probably will be the one dealing most of the damage. Again, that's just my opinion. I am not betting this fight, so I'm not overly confident in that read. Do with that information what you will. Antonina Shevchenko taking on Ariane Lipski. Shevchenko came in at 125. Lipski came in at 126. This one's interesting on both sides of the coin. So first and foremost, full honesty here, I've got a bet on Ariane Lipski. She's plus 140. I've got that tucked away in my pocket. I was hoping we would get up to plus 150, but it looked like the line had kind of peaked out there partway through the week, and there was some buyback coming the other direction. I'm glad I snagged that plus 140, and I hope you did too. Plus 140 is still available out there, I think, in one place. I'm seeing mostly plus 135s all the way down to plus 125 in certain spots. Shevchenko looked exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. And it's kind of like what I was talking about before. It's the eyes. She got up there and there was no pop. There was no fire. There was nothing. She was dead zombie staring straight ahead. It looked like it took everything she had to get through that weight cut. And that's not something that I like to see on a fighter that I'm betting. However, it is something I like to see on a fighter that I'm betting against, especially when her weakness is the grappling, when her weakness is the ground game. If you had a rough weight cut, if you have a bad gas tank, that's going to just eat away at that takedown defensibility more so than it would before. And we got to remember, Antonina Shevchenko, is a little bit older. She's 35, 36 years old at this point. That's the point in time where fighters start to have diminishing returns on some of this stuff. So that weight cut may just be getting to her. Lipski came in at 126, and she was the last one on the scales. So I can't pound my chest here and say that Lipski is a home run spot. I can't tell you that this is a smash opportunity because of what I saw in the eyes of Shevchenko here, because Lipski had a little bit of a rough weight cut herself, and I'm gonna always be open and completely honest with you guys. I'm not biased on the fighter that I bet. She didn't look phenomenal on the scales either. However, what she did do is move well. She was relaxed. She did look relieved when she made weight. I think it was a close call. I think it was tough. But she looked like she still had some energy left over in her. And I'm going to go ahead and take that as a positive sign. Now, when they faced off, Antonina Shevchenko was a decent bit bigger than Lipski. It was a respectful face-off. Both women just kind of wanted to get out of there, it seemed like. I'm going to go ahead and flip that coin. We got plus 140 on the underdog here. We've got the younger fighter who, in my opinion, has a higher upside and I believe has been working on her grappling with that huge glaring weakness in Shevchenko's game. This was not a post-weigh-in bet that I made. This is one I made earlier in the week, and now we just got to ride it out. I didn't see anything that's going to make me flip off of it and try to get away from it. I think the plus 140 on Lipski is still the way that I want to go, even though I'm a little nervous about it. Next up, we got a good one. Joaquin Buckley taking on Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright comes in at 185. Now, this is really, really interesting because he's fought as high as heavyweight before. He's fought at 205 before. He is a big dude, and coming in at 185 for his middleweight UFC debut, looked extremely good, didn't seem to have any issues here. And his opponent, Joaquin Buckley, obviously we know him from the Impa spinning heel kick knockout that went absolutely viral a couple of weeks ago. He was absolutely built. I've said a couple times, brick shit house. This guy falls into that category. His chest and his back are just massive. This guy is armed to the nines. But the interesting thing is he came in at 182.5. So he came in under the 185-pound limit, and he looked better than I've ever seen him, especially when he is in the kind of shape that this guy has always been his entire career. Coming in that kind of condition, under the weight limit, being the slightly smaller guy, that tells me something about his plan. I think this guy knows that speed kills in this spot, and that's what we've seen with Jordan Wright. He is 11-0 undefeated, but that doesn't tell you the whole story. If you missed our breakdown of this earlier in the week on the Die Hard MMA podcast, he has one really bad knockout loss on his record, and it came from Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Not a guy who's really known for knocking people out, but a guy that does have fast hands. And he iced Wright in a matter of about 30 seconds. Buckley is much better than Fluffy is. Buckley is much stronger than Fluffy is, and Buckley is probably faster than Fluffy is. So the fact that he came in light, he came in lean and mean, I think we're in for a first-round knockout type of situation here. The only issue that I have is the size of Jordan Wright. This guy is 11-0 with all 11 of those wins coming by finish. He's got big-time power in his kicks, and he's got thick tree trunk legs. This guy can throw spinning kicks. This guy's got good knees. In short range, he deals serious damage with his punches. And the key with Wright is that he has never been over the 2-minute and 30-second mark of the second round in his entire UFC career. Win, lose, or draw, he's only been to the second round, I think, once or twice, and both of those came in the first minute of those fights. He is a kill or be killed fighter with the way that he fights. And the same thing on the other side of Buckley. Now, Buckley has been in the fire. He has gone to decision a couple times. He's even won a couple decisions, so he's fully capable. But coming off of the phenomenal heel kick that he just had and the way that he came out against a guy like Holland, I don't think he's going to be backing down against a fighter like Wright. I expect this one to start fast, and the first post-weigh-in add-on that I have made for this card is that I'm going to lay the chalk on the under 1.5. I talked earlier in the week about maybe wanting to bet Wright. Just because of that size advantage, the height advantage, the reach advantage, the fact that he could have the power to knock out a guy like Buckley who has been knocked out before, he's a very, very intriguing underdog for me. But rather than steering into that variance, when I know full damn well that Joaquin Buckley is probably the better fighter here, he probably hits the harder of the two, he is the faster of the two, he may even have the higher ceiling of the two, even if he's just a little bit smaller. We think Buckley should probably win this fight, and instead of gambling on the underdog to maybe get that win, I'm going to bet the under 1.5 because no matter who wins this fight, I think it ends in the first round. Buckley is going to crash that pocket. He's going to look for that chin. He's going to look for it early with those fast hands, and if he gets caught with a head kick or a knee on his way in and we win this thing by knockout, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk when Jordan Wright gets his hand raised, as long as it happens in the first 2.5 minutes of the second round or the first round. I'm expecting Joaquin Buckley to win this thing by first round knockout, but I'm going to lay the -162 to play the under 1.5. Not something I normally do, but I think this is the spot to do it. It reminds me a lot of the Chaos Williams and Abdulrazak Al Hassan spot from just a week or two ago. We ended up rolling the dice on Chaos Williams, but that was more because we actually wanted to fade Abdulrazak Al Hassan, and we believe in Chaos Williams more so than in this case. Both guys have big guns, and this fight should be over in the first round regardless of who does it. Next up, maybe my favorite fight, not maybe, my favorite fight on the entire card, Brandon versus Brandon, Moreno versus Royval. We've got Brandon Moreno coming in, business as usual, weighs in at 125 pounds, just gets it done on the scale. Royval comes in at 125.5, and this guy literally jumped on the scale. Like, he apologized to the guy weighing him in because the scale started doing this thing after jumping on it. Just good vibes, full of energy, waving to people, ready to go, and, nothing against Brandon Moreno. I love that guy too, actually, and he's always in a good mood himself, but you could just feel the good vibes oozing off of Royval at the weigh-in today, which is really refreshing because most of these people are angry. They're cutting weight here at the last second. They're struggling. They're fighting for their lives. You don't usually get this kind of good mood on weigh-in day. When they faced off, here's the biggest key for me. Royval was huge. He was so much bigger than Brandon Moreno, far bigger than even I expected him to be. And it was a really good face-off. Both these guys look like they're in there ready to go, ready for a good time. So good vibes there too. It wasn't intense. It wasn't dirty, anything like that. Once again, I already have a bet on this one. I've got +160 in my pocket on Brandon Royval. And after the weigh-ins, that's still the way that I would be looking. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Moreno. He's bigger, taller, longer. He's better on the floor. And if anything, he's equal in the striking. I know people are going to argue with me on that point, but Moreno is a better technical boxer, whereas Royval has a solid Muay Thai style. They just aren't the same thing. You can say that, one is a better striker than the other, but that's such a broad verbiage. Moreno is a better boxer. Royval is better at Muay Thai. It's going to be an interesting dance on the feet, but every other advantage goes to Royval, who is also the bigger and longer fighter, who in my opinion also has more of a knockout threat. He's got more power than Moreno does, and we've seen that proven at the UFC level. I'm going to roll +160 on Raw Dog here. I'm already locked in. I like it, and I'm ready to go. And you can't change my mind. We've got Mauricio Shogun Rua taking on Paul Craig in the rematch. We've got 205.5 pounds for both men. Shogun got on the scale, and just classic Shogun Rua here. He's a bit flabby. He's a guy that probably should be fighting at 185. Whatever. He just comes in and does his thing. He's ready to go. Can't say anything there. He's a consummate professional. Just gets it done. Paul Craig came in and looks mean and locked in. That's one thing I love about this guy. He is always ready to go. He got up into Shogun's face, tried to, get into it with him at the face-offs, and it was good, really intense. And we always see that from Paul Craig. He's a guy that always tries to do that, and I love it. It's just a spectacle every single time he gets in there. This one's really fun. So I know we've talked about this fight back and forth, and I don't see anything that really changes my mind here. I expect Paul Craig to get the win here. However, I do not want to lay -200 on a guy like Paul Craig. He's got such a low IQ. If you want to take a shot at Paul Craig inside the distance, I don't hate it. If you want to take a shot on the dog and Shogun because he's tried, true, proven, tested, and knows how to win fights, I don't blame you for that either. This is one that, maybe in my Hail Mary, the one we're just, looking to bomb down the middle and say, Hopkins is out there somewhere. We'll go ahead and throw Paul Craig in that Hail Mary parlay because I do think he ends up getting this one done, but nothing at the weigh-ins that's going to skew me one way or the other. Next up, we've got the women's fight here. Katlyn Chookagian versus Cynthia Calvillo. Chookagian came in at 124.75, and Cynthia Calvillo came in at 124.5. Business as usual for Chookagian. All smiles. She looked like she was good, ready to go. Same thing on the side of Cynthia Calvillo. She was happy. She was smiling. Both these women, really no problems. We've never had Chookagian have an issue making weight, and Cynthia Calvillo belongs a weight class below. So she is just fine making this weight limit. Good stare down. They started getting up into each other, and the best thing about this face-off was the guy that was on the stage with them. So Dana White's got the day off today, apparently, and his fill-in did not know what to do with his hands. It looked like Cynthia wanted to get up in the face of Chookagian, and he steps in to split them, but his hand came in right at boob level. So you can see him go, oh, shit, and it's like, He's like doing this, trying to figure out where his hand should go because you don't want to go too low and you don't want to get up too high either. He eventually gave up and just kind of pulled his hand away and was like, all right, I'm just going to back out of here. So that was highly entertaining. I got a good little laugh out of that. This is another one where I talked about earlier in the week that Katlyn Chookagian probably has some decent value here. I think she's being undervalued because of how she looked in her last fight, because she got torn up by her opponent. You know, yeah, Cynthia Calvillo just doesn't have that power, though. She's not on draws. She's not going to come in here and just wade in and rip to the body. She's not capable of that. I think this is going to be a 15-round war, and we might see some takedowns from Cynthia Calvillo that gets this thing ground out for a victory, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be hairy. I've decided not to trust my money on Katlyn Chookagian, even though that line is a little bit wide in my opinion. Cynthia Calvillo's got all the upside as far as being a fighter, and I do think she'll be able to take down Katlyn Chookagian, and that should be enough for her to steal the fight away. So I'm going to pass on this one. My prediction is going to be Cynthia Calvillo by decision, but I wouldn't be shocked if Chookagian weasels out a split on her side of things. Now here's the big one. Here we go. This is the fun one. Platinum Mike Perry taking on Tim Dirty Bird Means. Mike Perry came in here. Mike Perry. Apparently I'm having a hard time talking today. Mike Perry came in at 175.5. That's right, 4.5 pounds over the limit. So what they do is when you hit 5 or more pounds over the limit, they call the fight. So the fact that he even wanted to be able to compete, he had to make 175.5. Now he got up there. If anybody missed it, he was tweeting out last night how hard the weight cut was going, how the weight just wasn't coming off anymore. His body stopped sweating. It was so hard. And, you know, there's videos of him out there eating cheeseburgers and pizza leading up to this fight. The dude is just an absolute train wreck right now. He gets up there, misses weight by the absolute max, and throws up the dab. Classic Mike Perry style, just fueling the fire. Tim Means comes in at 171, professional, good to go, no issues, relaxed, business as usual. He looked really good. Now, when they went to the face-off, Mike Perry was clowning him. He was doing this thing where he would not look him in the face, which is a little bit odd for Mike Perry, but he was just kind of dancing around, kind of doing this thing, and refused to look at him. And Tim Means, I love this. Tim Means got down on him and, like, forced him to come up and look him in the eye. He was kind of like matching the bob until he locked eyes with Mike Perry and made him stare down. I mean, just the confidence level in Tim, that's something that I feel a little bit better about backing him here. Tim is going to have a big height and reach advantage. And again, this is another one where I was surprised at the extent of the height advantage for Tim Means. Perry is much, much smaller than the Dirty Bird here in this spot. So I did go ahead and lock up Tim Means at plus 125. If you watch the podcast on Monday, you know I've been looking at Tim Means essentially all week, and I think that he's a live dog here in this spot. He's the better technical fighter, and I think that if he's just able to stay safe and avoid the one big bomb from Mike Perry, he should be able to win this fight. But I wanted better than plus 115. I wanted better than plus 120, and I was hoping to get around the plus 140 or plus 150 range, and the line just kind of peaked out when Perry started tweeting. And now that Perry has missed weight by the absolute maximum and looked like a fool on the stage, that line is crashing. I locked in Tim Means at plus 125, and I hope you saw my tweet. I hope you're following me on Twitter for that kind of stuff, at DieHard MMA Pod, because we beat this one today. He's already down to plus 110 across the board, and we're seeing plus 100s even in spots. Everyone is hammering Tim Means because of how bad Mike Perry looked. Now, the only thing for me is I want to say just be a little bit careful, because Mike Perry's still a caged animal. Mike Perry still has that raw power, and I don't think his timing is going to be on. He's not training at any big major gym at this point. He's got the dad bod thing going on. He looks like he's a little bit heavier. Really, all he's been doing is hitting a heavy bag and lifting weights leading up to this fight, which means his timing is going to be off, but his power is going to be there. So because of that, we still can't necessarily say, let's go ahead and put 5 units on Tim Means, because he walks through his opponent here. That durability and that power, that chin issue, it's still there. So don't go crazy. I do like Tim Means in this spot. I am betting Tim Means in this spot, but we just have to be careful about how we approach it. I do sympathize just a little bit with Mike Perry, because as a parent myself, any parent can tell you that when you shift from having to just provide for yourself to having to provide for a family, that's a really big life adjustment, and it's something that someone who has struggled mentally speaking, like Mike Perry in the past, It's something he apparently is having a hard time adjusting to. You can tell his girl is his world, and he's really excited about his kid being on the way. They call dad bod for a reason. This dude is eating. It's probably the stress that's getting to him. Now he's got to fight to put food on the table for an extra mouth. So I think there's a lot at play here, and Mike Perry had to give up 30% of his purse for this fight because of that weight miss. I do think Tim Means is going to go out there and get business done. But again, Mike Perry with the extra 5 pounds on him, he may just hit that much harder. So let's still be careful here on this one, even though that's the move to be made at this point in time. And I feel like we got the best number we're going to get our hands on. Valentina Shevchenko, the queen of women's flyweight, came in at 124.5. Jennifer Maia, the challenger, 124.5 as well. Neither of them had any issues today, except Valentina Shevchenko. She gave her customary pose, the little one-arm flex she does. She had kind of a cocky smirk. But just like her sister Antonina, she looked a little tired. If you look very closely at Valentina Shevchenko, you look at her face, she's a little worn out. The fire isn't quite in her eyes. She gave a cocky smirk, but the soul is gone. I think she had a rough weight cut. I think she had a bit of a hard time, just like her sister did this week. The fact that those two train and work out together, the fact that I saw the exact same thing from her sister, leads me to believe that there's a little bit of a question there. Now, Jennifer Maia came in looking good. No issues. She looked sharp. She looked ready to go. And I'm not saying that Jennifer Maia is going to actually beat Valentina Shevchenko, okay? Like, that's some crazy talk. But if Valentina Shevchenko had a rough weight cut, honestly, I like my over that much better. I've got the over 2.5 sitting in my pocket already, and that's the way that I like on this one. I think Jennifer Maia, she's taken the necessary steps. This is a woman who has struggled on the scales in the past before, and it's cost her in some places. She came in sharp, ready to go in this spot, and even weighed in a half pound under. So she has made those championship adjustments. We have no reason to question Shevchenko whatsoever from a resume standpoint. But her body language on the scale today did concern me just a little bit. Honestly, I hope we get just a damn good fight. I hope Jennifer Maia is able to get out there and drain that gas tank a little bit, wear her down and wrestle her, and get this thing all the way to a boring 5-round main event, because that means I'll be cashing my over 2.5 super easily. That should be fun. I expect Valentina Shevchenko to win this fight still. It's a matter of when and how, but if she is at all damaged, if she does have any type of gas tank issues, a grinding, grappling monster like Jennifer Maia is maybe the worst case scenario for you. So here's hoping on that over. Main event time, Deiveson Figueiredo taking on Alex Perez. Figueiredo closes out our parlay with Cosce from earlier in the evening. We're betting the first and the last fight of the night here in this parlay, which is a little bit fun. Deiveson Figueiredo came in at 125 on the dot, and the man weighed in early today, which he's another one that's had big-time problems making weight in the past. And even in his fight against Joe Benavidez, that was a spot where he didn't get the belt the first time they fought because he missed weight for that one. So good to see him. Good to see him doing this. He really invested in himself. There was an article that came out earlier in the week that talked about him getting a nutritionist and stuff like that. He is using all the money that he's making from being the UFC champion and reinvesting in his career to stay the UFC champion. I think that's a really wise and smart move from him, and it's the sign of a guy that's going to be sticking around at the top for a while. He was dialed in, big flex, ready to go, and he had the crazy eyes thing going on, which I always love to see. You don't bet against crazy. My cousin Michelle told me that one time. Alex Perez came in at 124.5. He was first to the scale, and he looked incredible. Both these guys physically just ready to go. Alex Perez is a little bit bigger. When they faced off, it was a really intense face-off. And one thing I didn't like is Deiveson Figueiredo tried to get a flinch out of Alex Perez and didn't get any reaction at all. Perez was completely stone cold. Now, normally speaking, that's something that I don't like a bully. I don't like when people try to bully each other at the face-offs, especially when they don't get that reaction, because if you've got that bully mentality, if you're looking for a chink in the armor of your opponent and you get nothing in return, that damages you. That backfires. That comes back on you and makes you question yourself. And you see how solid they are, their belief in themselves. It completely tears apart your idea of being able to punk the person across the stage from you. So I did not like seeing that whatsoever. And honestly, the Perez size difference, that could be an issue because this guy is a serious grappler, and we have seen grappling be a bit of a problem for Deiveson Figueiredo. So the fact that he's going to have a size advantage here, that could be a bit of an issue. I do still like Deiveson Figueiredo. This is not a spot where I'm scared enough to hedge off, but it does look like a lot of money is coming in on Perez after that face-off. We saw him get as high as plus 275. He's about plus 250 right now, and I'm seeing him down at plus 217 even in places. There's a big flood of money coming in on the underdog here. He is a live dog. This should be a fun fight, but I do think Deiveson Figueiredo, with his weight on point, should be able to eventually find the button, and I think he's going to make Perez pay for the leg kicks and the takedown attempts, and that'll really be the key to this one. I already locked in the over 1.5 on this one. I've got the parlay with Cosce and Figueiredo. That's my main big bet here. I do think Figueiredo still gets it done, but I have that over 1.5 as insurance, because if Perez is going to win this fight, he's going to have to wear out Figueiredo. He's going to have to take him down. He's going to have to drag him into the later waters and then drown him once you get there. Make that gas tank really hurt. So I'm thinking that over 1.5 probably cashes. I fully expect Perez to win maybe the first round, maybe even the second round, and then have Figueiredo kind of take over at that point once it gets harder for Perez to keep up the takedowns and once the significant strikes accumulate coming from Figueiredo. I kind of expect this one to be another round 3 or 5 finish, so I may end up sprinkling those props on Figueiredo as well, because I don't necessarily expect Figueiredo to come out and just blast one right off the bat and get it done. He's fully capable of it. We have seen Perez knocked out in the first round by Joe Benavidez, in fact. So that's not out of the question, and Figueiredo is more than capable of knocking a man out early that way. However, he's another guy that does like to take his time. He's another guy that likes to hurt his opponents. He's a very mean individual. So because of that, I think this fight will stretch out just a little bit, and let's not forget these are flyweights. So even though we're dealing with phenomenal power for guys at 125, generally speaking, 125-pound fighters, just like the women's fighters, they tend to drag out a little bit further because they're more speed-based and less power-based than some of the other fighters on the roster that are a little higher up the weight scale. That's it, folks. That's all I got for you. That's the post-weigh-in recap here from the Die Hard MMA podcast and odds.com. Thank you very much for tuning in. The 2 real additions that we made for the post-weigh-in recap today, we're taking the shot on 10 means at plus 125 and then taking a shot at the under 1.5 in the Buckley and Wright fight, because I think that one's going to be a 1-round battle one way or the other. Good luck on Saturday. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at DieHardMMAPod if you've got any questions or if you just want to talk bets and fights with me. That's where we do all of that. Do me a favor, give this video a like, share it with a friend of yours that enjoys betting, and let's just make some more UFC fans. Again, good luck on all your action. We'll see you on Saturday, and let's roll.